those of you who've been in Bend for quite a while, you recognize the name. You probably have met Bruce before, especially from his years of being the member of the city council and being mayor of Bend from 2006 to 2007. He's been a grant writer for the Bend Pine School District, and more importantly, he's a fellow Rotarian, probably past president, I'm guessing, of his club and district governor. And we'd like to welcome him to talk about another icon of the Bend community. So, Bruce and Abernethy.
Thank you very much. That is not going to step. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, it is really a pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you very much. And before I start, I want to again just say how appreciative we are to James and your family for hosting Jay. It clearly was. It's one of these things where you can't promise what the experience is going to be like, but you know, this is clearly now a second family for Jade, and so that happened, and I certainly hope that happens in the future as well. So thank you. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to share a little story, and I will let you know right at the beginning that it has a happy ending. And in fact, we are in the middle of. Should we start over again? Sorry. We are in the middle of writing a sequel, and how that sequel plays out depends to some extent on you and other members of this community. So let's go ahead and get started. So as was mentioned, I've been the grant writer for the Bend Pine School District for 21 years. And about 10 years ago, Sherry Helt came to me. At that time, she was on the board of the Bend Pine School District. And she said, Bruce, I have an idea, and if you think it's a good one, I'm going to need your help because I need to raise some money. Okay? And she said, right now, if you're in high school and you're really good at athletics or you're really good academically, you're going to get all the attention, you're going to get all the scholarship, people are going to see you as a success. And she goes, I want to do something for the kids where just making it to graduation is an incredible accomplishment. And I want to call it the Perseverance Awards. And I said, love it. Let's see what we can do with that. And so, you know, she and her husband Steve, they own Zydeco Restaurant. They'd put on some events there. I'd write some grants. We'd make personal asks. I would say we'd raise maybe $15,000 in a year. And it was one of these things where this was not a scholarship that students could apply for. They basically were nominated and they were selected. It'd be like, Steve, congratulations. You're going to get an award and a nice meal. You need to do two things. It's on such and such a date. You need to invite your principal, and you need to invite an adult who has helped you get through some of the things to get you where you are here. And one of the first things we noticed at these events was some of the kids brought a parent, and some did not. And I had an opportunity. I only went to one of those events, and it was held in the loft. And you know, the 5 or 6 kids would come with their entourage. Sherry would have made a special plaque for each of them. She'd bring in, you know, a local celebrity, Bob Shaw, Drew Bledsoe. They'd do sort of a pep talk, have a nice meal, and after the meal, one of the principals would share some of the things that these kids had gone through. And I want to be really clear, this was not done in an exploitative way. It was incredibly sensitive. But I still remember right now, the one time that I heard about 3 kids. And the first kid was a young woman. Both of her parents were drug addicts. And so she was not only going to high school, she was raising her 2 younger siblings. The second was a young gentleman who during high school, his family moved 17 times. And the third was a young woman, 3 out of her 4 years in high school, lived out of her family's car. And I'm thinking to myself, dang, I didn't have to deal with any of that stuff. And then Sherry would ask all of the kids to turn over the plaque, and on the back it said, you've been awarded a year scholarship at COCC. You know, so not a dry eye in the house. It was just great. But I got to tell you, it It was incredibly labor intensive. Our bank account was zero again, and we had to go through the process again. And I would say maybe 6 or 7 years in, it was kind of running on fumes, and it was being run through the Ben Lapine Education Foundation, which is essentially the 501c3 arm of the Ben Lapine School District, and they've done a phenomenal job of helping to manage money and scholarships and all that. But it had not really gone to the level that we thought an idea of that magnitude had. And in December, I don't remember exactly, but in December of 2022, I get a call out of the blue. And this woman goes, "You don't know me, but I am a trustee of an estate of a Ben businessman who passed away in 2019. And I've heard about this thing called the Perseverance Awards. I'd like to hear more." So I, of course, give my best 10-minute pitch over the phone. Luckily, it was good enough. She said, "This sounds great. I tell you, I want to invite you to our next trustee meeting in January." And I go, and the Education Foundation, I brought with me a woman named Odette Adair. She's locally a realtor, but she was the chair of the Education Foundation. And because of IRS laws, because even I work for the school district, I'm not allowed to have an official role with the Education Foundation. Let's just say I took some liberties. And when I got there, I learned really quickly that the businessman who had passed away was Axel Hoke. And this was someone who was a member of your club from 1986. I don't know until his death, but basically he was apparently one of the charter members of Greater Bend Rotary, and then he transferred to the Bend Club in 1986 because there was a Tuesday conflict. And Axel is generally credited with bringing fine dining to Bend. Born and raised in Bavaria, trained in hotel management and culinary. He opened the Black Forest Inn, Old Blacksmith Shop, the Bistro. I mean, really credited with putting fine dining on the map here in Central Oregon. Also a very successful businessman. Found out that he owned a small shopping center on the west side of Bend, and the trustees, they didn't sell it when he died. So it was still generating revenue, okay? And one of the things in talking with the trustees, two of them you know quite well, Pat Keskard and Tom Collier, those were the other two that I met that day, realized that this was a really good fit. Axel's desire in his will was to help kids attend school that wouldn't otherwise be able to do so. And he wanted to focus on people that wanted to go to a 2-year community college, a 4-year institution, or a trade school. He wanted it to be in Oregon, and he wanted to basically have a pipeline for Ben Lapine kids to go on to pursue their dreams. And found out that this was a really good fit. It was clear the funds were very, very flexible. They could be used for tuition and fees, they could be used for housing and food, laptop, tutoring, books, etc. The meeting went so well that at the end of it, I said, this seemed to be a really productive use of our time. If you would like me to, I'd be happy to put together a proposal for you to consider. That's what I do in my business as a grant writer. I write proposals. And I think Pat said, "That's a great idea. I tell you what, we'll talk about it after you leave, and we'll let you know what figures to use." And I go, "Yeah, that's really important for me to know." And again, I want to go back to the fact that this shopping center is still going. So even though the word endowment was never mentioned, it was kind of an implication that if this transaction works out, this could be an ongoing line of support. So I'm driving home, I get a call from Pat, and Pat goes, "Man, you guys hit it out of the park. We love what we heard. We think this is going to work. We want you to develop a 3-year proposal for us to consider. In year 1, we want you to use the figure of $100,000. And in year 2, $200,000. And in year 3, $300,000. And I'm like, I can do that. And so I called Sherry Held, and she's like, in tears, she's like, I want to run that program, you know. And so that was January. So in February, the proposal that we brought to Axel's trustees, and it's called the My Antigo Charitable Foundation. I forget, I could be wrong, but I'm thinking like My Antigo was one of Axel's favorite cities, maybe in Mexico, or something along those lines. So when I say Axel's estate, My Antigo Charitable Foundation, those are interchangeable. So the proposal that Sherry and I brought in February basically said, hey, you guys put $100,000 into the pot for the students, and we will look at, oh, you put $100,000 into the pot for the students, and administratively, Sherry Health will cost $0, because she's volunteering her time. And Bruce Abernethy will cost $0, because at that time, I could simply flex my job description and say, that's part of my job description, and I'm retiring in 2 weeks, I'm gonna continue to do it for free. So basically, administratively, at $0 cost, and because I'm a grant writer, I will raise an additional $50,000 a year from the community foundations, etc. So you put in 100, we'll give 150 to the kids. Sound okay? They said, yeah, that sounds great. And so we left that meeting very happy. So all of a sudden, we had money that we had never had before, okay? And we're like, wow, what do we do? And fortunately, I don't know if people have ever heard of the Ford Family Foundation. It's basically they do about 250 scholarships a year, so just much larger scale. They were wonderful mentors, not only providing technical assistance, they shared with us materials that we were able to use and modify as we moved forward. And so we said, let's do an application, and in this case, we absolutely wanted students to apply for this. Okay? So we talked to all the counselors, we got it out, we did little presentations. They had to basically do 5 essay questions, get 2 letters of recommendation, transcript. They had to apply through FAFSA for financial aid. We put it out there, and we just didn't know what we would get. And we ended up getting 17 applicants. And it was one of these things where we also brought in a couple other people from the community to sort of review and score these, and so it's sort of a cumulative score, and then we were able to rank these 17 applicants. And I just want to share with you the opening sentence of one of the essays to the question, describe some of the challenges you've overcome or what are the hurdles that you've worked through. The opening sentence, I was born in prison. Okay? We'll just let that, here, take it all. and unfortunately, the rest of the essay was just example after example of clawing and kicking and what can I do to get beyond this god-awful hand that I was dealt that I didn't deserve, okay? And, you know, we saw issues of abuse, homelessness, neglect, again, substance abuse, etc. Somehow, we were able to rank each of the 17 kids, and then we were like, okay, how far does $100,000 go? You know, because we were thinking, you take $100,000, that's cohort 1, and then the 200 in year 2, you take $100,000, that's cohort 1's second year, and then you can do 100,000 for so we can basically stair step this up, okay? But we thought we only had experience working with COCC, and so we thought, I don't know, maybe $16,000 to $25,000 a year. Some kids might want to live in the dorm, some might live at home. We thought maybe 4 to 6 kids, and so we decided to interview the top 6 kids. And somewhere along the lines, we came up with, rather than sort of giving a flat amount of scholarship to each kid, we said, let's make this a top-off grant, okay? And what I mean by that is, basically we tell the kids, hey, where do you want to go? You know, is your family able to make any financial contribution? And then what aid are you able to get, whether it's federal Pell, state Oregon Opportunity Grant, any school-specific aid, and any other scholarships you're able to get. Add all those up, cost of attendance minus everything you're able to bring to the table. What's the gap? We got the gap. So our concept was we would be able to have these scholars say you will be able to attend the school of your choice to your community college for institution or trade school and graduate debt-free. Okay? And so we basically thought we'd be able to make that promise to the top 4. We weren't sure we'd be able to do it to numbers 5 and 6. We didn't want to get over our skis, because one of the things we have found is that the second, third, and fourth year of college is way more expensive than the first year, because a lot of the scholarships, they're 1 year. They get you there, plus you throw in costs of inflation, etc. So we weren't sure. We said 4 top off, 5, 6, maybe flat rate TBD. And then something incredible happened. These kids, they came from such low-income households that their student aid index was minus 1,500, which means basically they maxed out. They got the maximum amount of federal Pell, the maximum amount of state aid, and we realized it's not going to cost us $16,000 to $25,000 per kid. Let's interview number 7 and 8. So we did. We brought them in. Let's interview 9 and 10. We brought them in. We ended up awarding 11 kids this scholarship. And let me tell you where they're going. 5, University of Oregon. 2, Oregon State. 1, Southern Oregon University. And 3 to COCC. And we were like, wow. And the trustees were like, wow. And so then we started learning the process of like, wow, the schools are quite different in terms of whether they'll let you talk on a student's behalf, is the bookstore part of the institution or not. So we're still learning this process, but we thought that was a pretty good year. So we started gearing up for the second year, and we literally are about 3 weeks removed from having selected our next cohort. And this time around, we had 28 applicants, and we went through the same process. We ranked them, and it was a little bit different, because completely coincidentally, in the first round, not a single student wanted to go to a private institution, and this time around, 4 of our top students wanted to go to a private school, and like $70,000 tuition. And we had some conversations with the trustees, and like, I don't think Axel would support going to private schools when public schools are just as good. And we talked to the kids, and we found that they had compelling reasons as to why this was the best school for them. And so we came up with a compromise. Rather than having this scholarship aid for the private institution, rather than having it be a top-off grant, it was going to be a flat grant. And we basically said, we will give you $15,000 per year, renewable for up to 4 years, so $60,000 total. If that gets you close enough that you're willing to either take out loans or whatever to go to your dream school, we can help you get there. And that was a good compromise. And so of the 10 students that we're selecting this year, 4 of them are going to private schools. We got 2 going to Pacific University, 1 going to University of Portland, and 1 going to George Fox University. We also have 2 going to COCC, 1 going to Southern Oregon University. I'm forgetting. But again, it was an incredible process of learning about these kids. And I'm going to share a little bit of the interviews with 2 of the kids. I'm obviously not going to do names because of privacy issues. But one of the kids, in his essay, he wrote that he grew up. He didn't speak English until he was 6 years old. His dad was Bolivian. His mom was that sounds racist. His mom was basically American, U.S., and his dad's parents lived with him, so they only spoke Bolivian, Spanish in the household. But his mom had a travel job, and so she was oftentimes gone. So he said, I didn't speak English really until I was 6 years old. Okay, and then his parents split up. He was with his mom, but she went back to New York. Bottom line is that his mom was traveling a lot. At age 11, she basically said to him, you don't need to go to school anymore. You're not really getting anything out of that. So from age 11 to age 14, he basically didn't go to school. And he said, I spent a lot of time online, I sort of learning stuff and taught me stuff. And I forget, he said I created an app and I had 10,000 followers when I was 16. I don't remember what but the point is, he did not have a regular school. He moved around Idaho, New York, Florida, Oregon. He showed up on the doorstep of Bend High School in early October. So he missed the first couple of weeks of school. And he showed up as a junior. And his counselor was in the interview with him. We basically say to these kids, as you're sharing what you've gone through, that may be traumatic. We want to make sure you have a caring adult, a supportive adult there if you need it. And the counselor was there, and he said, I remember him showing up, and he said, I'd like to enroll in these honors classes. And I'm like, I don't know what your transcript looks like. And he ended up not only enrolling as a junior, he graduated as a senior this spring. Okay, so he's clearly a savant. Okay, and after the interview was over, Sherry said to him, she said, I'm just curious, have you ever gone to one school in consecutive years? And he goes, no. And then she goes, have you ever completed a whole year at one school? And he goes, no. And we're just like, dang. I mean, he's an emancipated minor at this point, so he's one of the people that we're going to be supporting. Another person has cerebral palsy and lived most of his life in a wheelchair, uses a walker to get around school. One of the essays is, describe some of the challenges that you've overcome. And, this one was, tell us about an accomplishment that you're very proud of. And he said, one of my best friends gave me a necklace that I absolutely loved, and it took me 40 minutes to learn how to make the clasp work because of the fine motor skills that you just don't have with cerebral palsy. And he came in, and we were talking, just sort of introducing himself, and he says, yeah, I've been skiing for the last 10 years with Oregon Adaptive Sports. And people are familiar with that, and so up at Bachelor. And he goes, and they finally let me ski by myself. And last weekend, I went down the summit. And I'm going, wow, okay. And he also, this is a visual thing, he goes, my parents, they bought me an e-bike that I ride on trails. It's got 2 wheels in the front and 1 in the back for balance. And he goes, and I went over a jump and I did a flip, and luckily I landed upright, and I thought to myself, wow, I need to get a roll bar for that thing. And we're going, yeah, we want to support you. Okay? He's going to OSU Cascades. He wants to do outdoor product design, and he wants to help people with disabilities improve their quality of life.
Wow.
So, I mean, we had kids, parent committed suicide, house burned down, things along those lines. It was so moving and so meaningful to Sherry and me that, and the team, the people on the Valentine Education Foundation, who again have been just wonderful partners in all this. So we had an orientation for them 2 weeks ago. We're going to bring in an executive functioning coach, because a lot of these kids, they've never been away from home. And that's different. You don't know. Some of these kids, they look like they're going to be they're rock stars in high school. They think they're going to be great in college, and they are. Others fail the course or two. But one of the things about this scholarship is it's a partnership, and we will bend over backwards. We actually have each of the kids. They are assigned a mentor that checks in with them every couple of weeks, helps with communication, things along those lines, and we will be pushing the second sort of cohort off to school later this fall. But anyway, that's kind of the story. What you have on your table, this is the 2-page sort of overview that we share with all of the schools, all of the counselors, students can see it. We have a copy in Spanish as well. And then this, related to it, this is sort of the bullet points. These are some of the things that we think makes this scholarship really unique. So again, the final pitch is, if you were moved by this story, if you or you know anyone else in the community that might want to invest in this, because the Axel's estate is giving $100,000 a year per cohort. I've raised an additional $70,000 from foundations, family foundations, donors, etc. So we'd like to keep that going, because the other thing I should say is, because Sherry and I aren't charging anything, and my Antigua Charitable Foundation is paying the Education Foundation's 5% indirect, literally 100% goes directly to the students for all those things. So anyway, that's my presentation. So. Any questions? Yeah.
Bruce, I think it's fantastic. My question is, how do you guys manage, like the first year, there were 17 and only 11 got awarded? Was it lack of funds, or they just, like, how do you manage, now they get rejected again? You know, it's kind of like a snowball for some of these kids.
Yeah, that you raise a very good point. You know, I think we wrote, I think, as sensitive an email as we could. We're trying to work with the counselors to figure out how to support them, not only in helping to apply, but perhaps being that safety net if they don't get it. I mean, it's one of these things where, you know, you want to support everybody, but we knew we couldn't because we didn't have the funds. But it's, you know, it's one of these things where, you know, do you have any ideas on that? I don't.
I was just curious if it was, you know, we didn't have the funds, or they just weren't good candidates. They didn't, you know.
Oh, I would, honestly, from my perspective, I would say of the 17 applicants, I would say probably 12 or 13 we're legit there. I mean, this is you know, even though we were explicit that this is about people, what they've overcome, you had people that, I'm a 4.2 student and top athlete, like, yeah, that's not, there are other scholarships for that. So I would say probably 80 to 85% is a legit need, and this was sort of what we found the most compelling.
Yeah, I don't mean to throw shade. I think about that. It's like, I know you can't be all things to all people. I think it's great.
Yeah. And again, that was Axel's vision.
One more question from the crowd?
Well, what happens to Axel's contribution after year 3?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Does Axel's foundation funding end after year 3?
We haven't had that conversation, but that's why I alluded to it earlier. I think as of right now, they are over the moon. This has so far exceeded their expectations. My assumption is that it will continue. Again, we have not had that conversation, but given how they have reacted to being involved, seeing the students introduce themselves at the award ceremony, the implication is that will continue. And then also, as I try to raise more money, people will see this as something that really is a Bend and the Pine, you know, a community effort that should be continued. Thank you again.
Bruce, will you be able to stick around for a bit?
Absolutely.
And thank you, and I have a little token of our appreciation.
Okay.
That's sitting on my desk in my office.
That's good. I have never done that before. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks so much.